Happy Sunday, folks. Time for another weekly update. So, some went on this last week. First item I put on here is money. That isn't always the budget. Sometimes it's just items around money. So, one of the things I actually learned about, I think it was 2 weeks ago, but I hadn't mentioned yet on here, is there's a work group going together at the state level to talk about RV fee allocations. This is something I talked about during the first 6 months I was in office. I was going back through agreements and distribution methods for some of the funds that the county receives back from the state or from the state. And one of those funds was a allocation based on three factors. Now it is I believe it was RV fees, RV fee allocation. So it was a formula specific to RVs, basically. 50% of it was based on the number of qualifying RV slots you had in your county. These are camp style. 20% was based on the registrations of RVs in your county, so still consistent around RVs. This makes sense. But then 30% was around raw population of your county. That's the part where things stopped making sense, because the instance that I've pointed out as the key example has been in Coos County, we have 500 qualifying RV slots to receive this funding. However, we are going to receive less money than Washington County is, and Washington County has no qualifying RV slots. They're going to receive more money because out of that 20% for RV registrations, but mostly the 30% that related to raw population. Which, when you look at what this is money that is premised around camping going to a county that has no camping of the type indicated. And that's a problem for me. That's a formula that was created in the 90s. A work group is being formed at the state level to revisit it and revise, which is what I requested, and I put it through some of our legislators over the past year as well, that, hey, I found this, can we fix this? It sounds like we're going to have the opportunity to try and do that. Our parks director, I believe, got himself into the work group, or at least is going to be in the meetings, and I'll be wedging my way in where I can, because this is an important item. Logic in funding is important. Money, in my opinion, should go to a like system to what generated it. If this is money that's related to RV campgrounds, that money should be going to counties that have those. And this would raise the funding going into our park system by about $140,000 a year if this gets corrected the way I would like to see. I'd like to see 70% based on qualifying slots, 30% based on registration of RVs. Raw population has nothing to do with it. So that would be good. If we can get that, we'll keep plugging at it. It's moving at the speed of government, but the good news is it's moving. Budget-wise, still looking okay. We've got some spots still just going to learn more about when the money is coming in for these changes in the allocation I've talked about. One of the things coming out of it, as I learn more and more about what's happening in terms of that federal change, I've also learned that so you've got two ways you can receive the federal timber money. One, Secure Rural Schools Act. Other one, receipts for timber sales. Now, Coos County had chosen a few years ago to do receipts, and that was the right decision at the time. It made more money than the SRS system did, and SRS wasn't renewed a few years ago. What I've learned is happening now is the federal government in the budget went back and said, we are going to make the SRS counties, the Secure Rural Schools counties, whole, going back to 22 or 23. So I've put a similar request through our Congresswoman, Val Hoyle's office. She's done a lot of work for us down here. Appreciate that. See if we can make a requested addition in here, because the SRS counties are being made whole. That's awesome. Something that changed for the receipts counties is that the formula was changed from a 50-50 to a 75-25 the way it originally was. So counties on receipts are receiving more money. Instead of 50% of the harvest, we're going to be awarded 75% moving into the future. And my request is something that's the equivalent to what was done with SRS already. They made SRS whole. Could we go back 3 years to when this decision was made, or however many years ago it was, and backfill that missing 25% that the federal government kept? You can think, well, why would they give it up, the federal government? Well, they've already chosen to do it with SRS, so it seems like a short hill to climb. Hopefully that works out. We'll know more as we know more. I sat in on a work group this week. We use a lot of data in local government. And the work group I was invited to, it's D2A, Data to Action, I believe is that acronym. They are working on a new dashboard and system to easily access information around substance abuse in Oregon. And I got to sit in for 4 hours and go through the methods they're looking at, the presentation methods, the websites, the designs, and how the data gets presented. Is it going to be graphs? Is it going to be these different lines moving along with different thicknesses to represent growth and change? But we also got to talk a little about the numbers that are known at this time and the problems with the data stream. So right now, if I wanted to know something about the rate of overdoses or overdose deaths in Coos County, I would not be going on a state website. It's all too old. In particular, it was pointed out during the meeting that the database showing OD deaths is backlogged out to, I think, July of 25. If I want to know about trends in drug use and fatalities, I don't want to know what was happening. Well, I do want to know what was happening 9 months ago, but I don't want that to be the most recent data I can possibly access. I talk to the people we've got here because our officers are going to know what's happening, our recovery specialists are going to know what's happening. And part of the objective of this group is to make it so the state's data is worth looking at. Interesting piece that came out of it, we also got shown a dashboard that was still in the beta phase, but according to the dashboard it was showing grants related to the Measure 110 funding by county. Looking at it, I was there with one of the other folks that works for one of the agencies dealing in substance abuse in the area. And we were shown a graph that showed the state believes it doubled the funding into Coos County related to substance. Now, I guarantee it hasn't, at least not by any of our local providers. I've met with Bay Area First Step, I've met with the HIV Alliance, who does a lot of work in that realm as well. Neither have received that much money. So that gave me a chance to talk with them about something I see in data that is interesting for folks to know here as well, maybe. When you're dealing with money coming into a county, the systems may say this money went to Coos County. That doesn't mean that the money went to the county. It's not, as the county government, we're not receiving it. That means it went to an agency. Just because an agency received it doesn't mean their primary location is Coos County. So what I'm guessing happened in this case is an agency that operates in Coos County, as well as many other counties, received additional funding. And that's what they're going to look at now to try and figure out, because something that just from working in the nonprofit world, I've seen what other organizations in other places have done, and I know how that can be worked with to make one thing seem like the other thing. But also in being specific to Measure 110, there's just been a lot of problems. That it can't really be disputed. You can look at the resignation letter of the first implementer citing the state not doing what its own study said it needed to make the program work, funds being spent pointlessly, basically. I don't want to say misspent or misallocated, or but not used in a way that was going to be effective. And that's represented in data as well. Over time, we've seen the data related to Measure 110 usually is conflating programs that received that money at least once, and then their data is still being used, even though they're not receiving any ongoing funding. So that, in particular, is is a challenge, and getting to talk with folks about data and actually get into kind of the nitty-gritty of some of that was good. And hopefully it creates a product we'll be able to use more effectively as commissioners, and that the public will be able to access and make sense of, not something that's kind of a tangle and a mess that's really outdated. Let's see. I've got the Prosperity Council meeting I'm going to be going to this week. So that the Prosperity Council, if folks haven't seen, the governor put out a prosperity roadmap, established a Prosperity Council, and I've got some suggestions I've put in there as well already. And I got invited to this listening session, so that's good. I'll be able to put some more input in there. But one of the big problems I saw with it is I've heard from people kind of across the political spectrum that this document, and as I've read it, I interpreted it this way as well, is not really meant for us. The composition of the council is almost entirely individuals located along the I-5. Now, it's not all northern I-5, but it is all but two of the Oregon groups are along I-5. One of them that's off of I-5 is a brewery in Astoria. The other one is, I believe it's the CEO of Tillamook Cheese is going to be on this thing, but their corporate address is Portland, so I'm not real sure where that individual is. But outside of Oregon, there's one in Santa Clara, I forget the company name, and another company in Seattle that's going to be on the board. So they've got as many people out of state as they do off of I-5 in this thing. And that's not very good as far as regional awareness goes. I've pointed that out. I've pointed out the composition issue. And one of the critical pieces, I think, as well, is going to be just the realism, the reality of the documents coming out and the way things are framed. You know, folks that know me know I don't really try and over sugarcoat anything. I just kind of deliver news as it sits, and then we deal with it from there. The documents I've seen around the Prosperity Council present it as though Oregon is doing just fine, but it needs to keep up. And the reality is not that. Anybody watching is going to know that. We've had challenges here in Coos County for a long time. Lots of rural Oregon has, and different parts along the I-5, in fairness, have had those struggles. And now it's really hitting the metro area hard. They are experiencing, as it regards tech, the same thing I feel that we experienced regarding timber when it collapsed. Portland had switched to IT, and now that's collapsed. So, yeah, that I think they need to have a little more reality when they present things out of the governor's office in those areas. You don't fix a problem without at least acknowledging the problem, and I think that's a barrier right now that's there. Let's see. Small thing, local government advisory committee. I'm on the LGAC for Department of Health and Human Services. It's a meeting I have monthly. Other commissioners are there, and I believe one of the city councilors from Powers sits on it as the only city councilor in the state on the LGAC, which is pretty cool. Yeah, there were conversations with the Oregon Health Authority basically this week about being presented from their side the need for collaboration and these good things that they're doing to make things more collaborative. And again, circling back on reality, we just a month or two ago got out of a 7-month fight with the OHA because they wanted to do things that were very much not collaborative. One of the other commissioners reminded them of this, and I spoke into it more, how would I say, more understanding, I think, to an extent, trying to help them understand in the nonprofit world, in the government world, we talk about breaking down silos a lot. This service is siloed. It doesn't communicate with this service, so you don't get as good of outcomes. We got to break down the silo. The thing is, I don't think OHA was able to understand a lot of our county concerns because it was coming out of systems that are not Oregon Health Authority in some cases. Like when they're telling us they don't intend to do anything that will make counties liable for certain federal lawsuits that the state is under, it's good they believe that. They don't know at the same time that the Oregon Attorney General's office is appealing the decision so that they can hold counties liable. Or they're not in the meeting where we're told something about a House bill and promised it from somebody in the governor's office, and then that's not what happens. It's the opposite. After counties were convinced to provide support for something, the state did not do the thing they promised. So the Oregon Health Authority, in fairness to them, doesn't know of the things being done between other state offices in the counties that cause us not to trust the state as a whole. And I think that's also going to factor into the Prosperity Council issue for the governor's office and the state as broadly as rebuilding trust is going to be tricky, especially when I sit in a meeting and hear about all these great collaborative things, knowing perfectly well for the last 7 months they've been wasting our staff's time and their staff's time over a pointless fight because they didn't want to collaborate, or they were being told not to. So, bit of a rant on that, but it's stuff I think it's good for people to know. These are the things we're looking at. When you hear somebody at the state say, well, we just don't trust the state enough, well, we've got a good reason to not. Then got a meeting in Lakeside this week talking about garbage. So this is something that's actually come up quite a bit in the past, but it usually comes up in spots where people don't see it as much. It usually, because the topic of garbage cleanup came up not just while I was on city council multiple times, but with commissioners in the room on the same boards talking about how do we deal with illegal garbage dumping around the county. Now that mostly comes up in the topic of homeless work groups. But it's important to also remember it's generally not the homeless people dumping hot water tanks out in the woods. You don't just end up with one of those. I was actually sent a video some months back, it was last year at some point, of some folks coming off of the dunes with their ATVs, loading them up on their big toy haulers, and just dumping bags of garbage at the end of, the word just ran away. Out near the dunes. Out near the dunes where they want to put the PCIP. Some ATVers had gone out there, had some fun, and then just dropped their black bags of garbage at the end of the road when they loaded their toy hauler up. Clearly they have the money to deal with this thing. That's how they chose to act instead. And I know this is something Commissioner Sweet has spent a lot of time on. He spends a lot of time also coordinating with the departments on where are we finding illegal dumping, hit the individual with the maximum fine if we can find them, because that's the only way that can be dealt with at this point, because a lot of people get away with it. You've got to try and make that cost benefit, not pencil. But folks may not know there are groups that do cleanups as well. So the former Devereaux Center used to send out crews that would clean up garbage out in the woods. They've done a number of cleanups in different places, and I talked with them, and they're open to the idea if something comes up as far out as Lakeside or in other parts of the county, we have a discussion around how we get that taken care of. Or there's another nonprofit that has sent out teams for cleanup before. How do we get all these pieces? How do we get rid of the silos and connect everybody to work together on this subject? And then also enforcement. How do we manage enforcement? When it's federal land, that's a big problem because the federal government is supposed to send their people to do the cleanup and they don't. Which I'm not saying that those employees don't want to. They're just not allocated the resources to do it. But then if you do it for the federal government, when are they ever going to do it for themselves? Questionable at best. But these are things I'll talk about with the folks on Friday. And we'll see what we can come up with. Other ideas that have been talked about in the past, these aren't proposals I'm making, just stuff I know has been talked about, is Expanding the public trash system to include some public dumpsters were topics at one point. Not just the private business ones, but some actual like big ones that could be hauled off at different points in time. Concern there had been people come from other communities and drop off their garbage. And that came up while I was on a city council. So, like if you put one giant garbage can in Coos Bay, are the people from North Bend and these other communities going to go dump their garbage in it and cost the Coos Bay taxpayers money? So you would kind of have to do it as a county-wide thing, and even then maybe have some considerations. Another topic that came up at one point was mandatory garbage service. Just require everybody in the county to have garbage service and bill them in the same way we do different other overlapping districts. That has other problems, obviously. Volunteer associations to do cleanup. That's an option, but that takes the volunteers to do it. And then how do you subsidize it? A topic I've looked at recently was if we do get an association of that type, can we do free dumping at the dump on a given day, or is there maybe one day out of a year we can talk about having it open for anything you want to dump, just go dump it? So there's ideas out there. There's things have been floated over time. There's things we're looking at. It'll be a good conversation on Friday. And then last thing I guess I'll mention, so with the federal timber dollars, when we talked about the budget being sealed up without cuts this cycle because of increased timber revenues due to formula changes at the federal level, we were asked on the commission in public comment if we will stop pursuing the Old Wagon Road project, collaborating with the Coquille tribe on timber harvests, because that money is there now to balance the budget as it sits. And to clarify, it was framed as though the Old Wagon Road is being given to a tribe. Not the case. Department of Interior, it's BLM owns the Old Wagon Road. That falls under Department of Interior at the federal level. The federal government owns that property. The proposal is that it move from BLM to Bureau of Indian Affairs, still under Department of Interior. Federal government owns it over here. Federal government will own it over there. But what it would do is allow for timber harvests on the Old Wagon Road property in collaboration with the Coquille tribe. Currently does little to nothing for us. We were asked if we would stop doing that because there's a circulated belief out there that the tribe will own the forest if it happens. Not true, but okay, that's what they believe. I said no because I don't see a reason to make do. I think our county has spent a lot of time looking for the next thing that will allow us to make do at the minimum that we have. I don't think that's a good way to continue forward. That approach has gotten us where we are today. And where we are today, I think folks generally agree, isn't a very good place when we look around ourselves. Things have been a lot better than they are today. So my intent is to continue pursuing things that will create jobs, raise the quality of life here, and allow the governmental systems as a whole to provide the services to the citizens that are essential. And when these developments happen, that is revenue coming into the county that pays for the additional DAs we need, the district attorneys, deputies, patrols, jail capacity, without having to go out to the public and ask for a safety levy or something of that type. So, always happy to hear alternatives, though. I will point that out. Some folks have told me about their concerns with the PCIP. I understand concerns. There are spots to be concerned about, certainly. What will the impact on the fishing be? What will the impact on noise, tourism, these sort of things be? Fair concerns. I always ask folks they bring me an alternative as well. If this isn't the thing we're going to do to create jobs and help people afford houses and make sure people have the police they need and all these good things. If that's not what we're going to do, bring me an alternative. That's all I ask. But that is my update and slight tangent rant for a while. Got a meeting tomorrow, I think. It'll be about something to do with PCIP in the morning. Citizen concerns, which, as I say, are great. Just tell me what your solutions are. And that'll be it. We will talk to y'all later.